Hi, I'm Andre Koen. I want to say thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to continue to talk about how we engage in this alignment process. And so we're going to go a little bit deeper and talk about each of the aspects of this alignment. And again, I want to remind folks that we were talking about this development gap between our intentions and our behaviors, right? So all too often we'll have staff members, we have community members, we'll have friends, families, and relatives that will say, you know what, I did not intend to say that, or I did not intend to do that, right? So they're looking at their behavior, they've been called on some kind of thing that they've done, and now they're saying that was not my intention. And that may be well and good. However, as creatures who are responsible for our behaviors, we've got to get to the root of that and say, well, what did you intend, right? What behavior was appropriate if that was not your intention and that was not the behavior that you wanted to have? So we're going to talk about how we approach this development gap. The first thing I'd like to kind of bring us to is this notion of values, right? So values are the center of everything that we do. If we think about those folks who gave us their best of intentions, who taught us about the world, everything that they taught us was really steeped in this value system. And ultimately, that's what they wanted us to carry with us, is their values, right? So my grandmother would often, give lots of proverbs, or she would say very clever things. And it wasn't that she wanted me to repeat those clever things, but she wanted me to learn from those teachings a set of values, right? And so as we think about these values from a personal standpoint, we're really looking at this notion of safety, significance, and belonging. And so being physically, mentally, spiritually, intellectually, psychologically safe in ways that I can give my significance, right? And I want to be in connections and in communities where my significance is understood, accepted, and used, right? So that's what we're after in terms of our personal values. And so when we think about, our in our early upbringing, be it our religious communities, whether it be our volunteer or social communities, whether it's families that we're born into or families that we select, which is my preference, families that we've selected, what is really trying to be fostered or supported is this notion that these three things are gifts that we're sharing as we're in community, right? So these personal values are really steeped around safety, significance, and belonging. And what I'd like for you to do right now is to just take a piece of paper and write down your five things that you value, and then see if there are some ways in which those five things that you value fit in one of these three categories, or fit in multiple categories simultaneously. Right? So our personal values, the things that we value, oftentimes fit in many of these categories. So, and the same can be said for our organizational values. And typically, when I've paid attention to organizations and their development and what they're after, they typically fall into kind of three categories. Maybe a fourth one, but I didn't put that in here. But we'll talk about that at another time. That organizations oftentimes fall into some kind of value around service, either the way they deliver service or the services that they provide. There's a value in terms of that service. There's also some aspect of innovation that you'll find either in a mission statement or in the core values of an organization. There are some ways in which they want to think about how to do things differently, more effectively, using innovation. So typically you'll find that. And then lastly, you'll have this notion of community that is in a core set of values in an organization. And that's both an internal community as well as an external community, right? So you have these values really centered around service, innovation, and community. Now, what I'd like for you to do is to just think about your own organization and their core values or their mission statement. Can they be put in these three categories or multiple categories at the same time? And then what does that say about how you help people to align with those with those values and how those values get defined? And, as a matter of fact, if you can, put in the comment section any aspect of values that I may have missed, right? I did talk about a fourth one, but I hinted at a fourth one that we'll talk about in another video. But these three pieces, I think, are very important in terms of understanding what an organization's set of values are. Right? So let's move on. And so then we get to this notion of goals. And so there are a couple of ways that I like to think about goals, both personal goals and organizational goals. And we'll talk about why both of those are important as we engage in more conversation, right? So this notion of goals. So from a personal standpoint, it really is about how is my talent being aligned within the organization? Am I being used to the best of my potential? Am I being able to grow my potential, right? So how is my talent aligned with the tasks that I'm asked to do, as well as the direction that the organization is going? Next is this notion of potential. Is my potential being fostered in the organization? So personally, I want my potential to be maximized. I want to live to my potential. I want to grow to my potential. And so from an individual standpoint, that's one of my goals, particularly when I'm entering in a relationship with an employer or organization. And then lastly is, what are the rewards? And some of those rewards are financial. Some of those rewards are kind of ego driven, the most positive part of our ego, right? Or achievement driven. And so when we think about this notion of goals, how are we being able to understand what individuals' goals are as we try to get them aligned to organizational goals? And our organizational goals typically are around achieving the mission. Right. So what was the organization brought together for? What was it created for? So how are people being able to live that mission or achieve that mission of the organization? The next is oftentimes the goals are centered around how do we measure that, right? So although we may be doing it, how do we measure it so that we can tell stories of the organization, or that we can see where there may be gaps where we can improve or be innovative, right? And then lastly is this notion of movement. How are we being able to move both towards our mission, and as an organization, how are we taking people's investment and time and energy and moving that into a productive way? So these goals are extremely important. And I would submit that once all of those things are in place, so we understand our intentions, we understand the core values, we understand the goals, both organizationally and individually, that we get to this place of alignment. And I would submit to you that when we are in alignment, right, that is where effectiveness shows up. So when people oftentimes ask, well, what does effectiveness look like? Well, I have to ask, what do your intentions look like? What do your values look like? What do your goals look like? And what do your behaviors as a result of that alignment? How does the organization function? Because that should be our measurement of effectiveness. And so when we think about our organizations, those become the hallmarks for really what it means to be an effective organization. Making sure that we have that alignment in place so that people can reach their potential, so that we recognize that the goal of the organization is to accomplish our mission, and that this notion of alignment is something that we actually can measure and we can hold people accountable to as we move forward. I want to say thank you so much for your time in this conversation. My name is Koen. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and follow us as we continue these conversations. And And we look forward to seeing who you become as we develop. And again, have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.